Greetings. This is your brother, Elder Blacklight. Before we get back into walking that righteous walk, we left out on the subject of Yaqub, which is Jacob in the Bible. Now, you know they got a bank run going on. So I'm going to launch a series to tell you how we got to this point and why we got to wake our people up. I would call for another Million Man March, but since I got low subscriptions and low views, that's something like the impossible dream. But if I ever reach the point of where I have 6,000 views, I will organize another Million Man March. You say, well, the first one failed because then nothing happened after that. We're going to explain that too. Keep on watching. Right now, we're going to get on this why we should unite with the motherland, Africa, and why they really killed Gaddafi starting off the first series.
That is the land of untruth. Yes, we came, we saw, we died.
That was former U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton's reaction following the capture and brutal murder of Libyan President Muammar Gaddafi. According to some, the invasion of Libya was about protecting civilians. Others said it was about Libya's vast oil reserves. But everyone was convinced that it was all about currency, specifically Gaddafi's plan to introduce the gold dinar, a single African currency made from gold that would eventually replace the US dollar when trading with Africa. Many scholars have said that it's the kind of thing that one has to plan almost in secret and launch it when ready, because as soon as you say it, you'll have a bullseye on your back. You see, the world relies on the US dollar, giving America unparalleled economic dominance. Nearly 90% of all international currency transactions are in dollars. 60% of foreign exchange reserves are held in dollars, and almost 40% of the world's debt is issued in US dollars. This gives the United States extraordinary power over nearly anyone who imports or exports anything, anywhere. Hillary Clinton's victory lap was explained as mission accomplished for the US NATO intervention following reports of mass atrocities under Gaddafi's regime. It was later revealed that President Obama himself had asked his advisors to draw up options including a new military front in Libya, and the Defense Department was reportedly standing ready with the full spectrum of ground military operations required. Unless you plead temporary insanity, you have to recognize the double standards. There were several other parts of the region in the Middle East and North Africa which pretty much needed humanitarian support, but which the West either ignored or didn't really pay the same amount of attention to. And so the world watched as Western armies pummeled Libya with bombs with the pretext of humanitarian intervention.
Madam Speaker, what do you call a group of unelected, unethical, power-hungry bureaucrats making policy decisions? In many countries, we would call them an oligarchy. In the United States, though, we call them the Federal Reserve. Which is funny because the Federal Reserve has no reserves and they're absolutely not part of the federal government.
What is the Fed? Recently opened Vatican archives are shedding new light on the relationship between Pope Pius XII and Adolf Hitler as he led Nazi Germany during World War II. Amna Nawaz looks at what we are learning and how it changes our thinking about the Vatican during that time.
Judy, in 2020, the Vatican released millions of documents on Pope Pius XII that were previously hidden from public view. These include transcripts of negotiations between the Pope and Nazis. A new book published today.
So how did it feel to make this prediction and then have the world essentially not listen and not prepare?
Well, there's no good feeling that comes on something like this saying, I told you so. If anything kills over 10 million people in the next few decades, it's most likely to be a highly infectious virus rather than a war. You know, I just think back of could I have been more persuasive? But we've actually invested very little in a system to stop an epidemic. We're not ready for the next epidemic.
How did you make such a prescient prediction? How did you know this was going to happen?
Well, there's a number of respiratory viruses, and from time to time one will come along that's very transmissive and causes some level of fatalities. Respiratory diseases are very scary because you're still walking around on a plane, a bus, when you're infectious. Unlike some other diseases like Ebola, where you're mostly in a hospital bed by the time the viral load infects other people.
Are you ready for this? Okay, so am I. So let's start with history. We'll go back to the 1st century BC to a tiny kingdom called Phrygia. And it was in that kingdom that there lived a philosopher by the name of Epictetus. And it was Epictetus who said, appearances are of 4 kinds. Things either are as they appear to be, or they neither are nor appear to be, or they are but do not appear to be, or they are not and yet appear to be. Don't worry, no quiz on that. Well, that's what he said. When I read that statement for the first time, I thought to myself that surely if Epictetus were alive today, he would undoubtedly be a Harvard professor of money and banking. Because this is the kind of explanation we get, isn't it? When we try and figure out what's going on in the economy, or what's going on with the Federal Reserve System.
Black man, you really don't know who you are. So, this is some previews of the things to come. So stay tuned for the next video. Assalamu alaikum.